Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a update on all of the stitching to do with the prompt wildflowers. So it's Wednesday, it's the 18th, and today is our next prompt from the girls. So what I thought I'd do is just come on and show you each of the projects and the finished embroidery. That way when we have our new prompt and I start my next lot of videos, we've covered that and we're ready to talk and work on the next prompt. So I think there'll be like an update video in amongst my little schedule. So we'll see how it's going, but at the moment each piece will appear in 4 consecutive days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, as we work through our 2-week period of time. But I think before the next prompt is revealed, we'll just finish off on the previous prompt. I think that's how it's all going to go. Anyway, I'll stop gas bagging and get on to how it all came together. So not a lot changed from what we put together in our last video for the French garden. I did stitch down the little house. I'll start with the little house. I stitched him down and I turned over the edge of the fabric. So I needle turned edged the fabric and then just put a little stitch in there to hold it all. I didn't have enough to turn this side, so that is a raw edge there, but I'm thinking I can disguise that with something that might grow up over the house at a later date. So I wasn't too worried. I probably, in hindsight, should have had that over here because the crochet edge would have covered it, but anyway, doesn't matter. Little chimney is stitched down. I just did a overcast stitch on that, just using cotton. Let me just come in a little bit more. You'll be able to see the little stitches there. Tucked in a little doily morsel there. And some of those doily morsels we were using for our little floral flowers for our wildflower. The little plant here is using those little shapes of satin. They come up really well. Pretty pleased with those. The bullion stitches, the loose curly bullion stitches, really happy with those. And then the little pistol stitches on top come in really well. This little guy, really pleased with that. End up doing some turkey work here. Now that was based off of this little guy in this book. So slightly different because I sort of lost my way of where my branch was going here. So I don't know, the pen sort of wasn't dark enough, so I went off on my own little tangent, which is not a bad thing because sometimes it produces something completely different and a bit special. I used some ribbon embroidery as well in there with the silk ribbon, so I'm happy with that. Some little pistol stitches down here in wool just to give it, you know, a cluster that it may have sprouted out of. I don't know, I'm overthinking these plants now. What else did I do? I put a couple stitches around, let me zoom in even more. See where that twisted sari silk come in? I just put a couple little stitches over that so it looks like it's joined to the actual branches. The leaves went in and I just used some pink through there. My go-to was the cream, but I had pink on the needle after having done the stems, and I just did the pink and I really like the way that come together. So a little bit out of the comfort zone there. Now let me just come out a little bit. So I'll take you down to the base here. The only thing that really changed here is this little piece was floating around my desk, so I ended up stitching that on, and I brought one of the stems to the front of it. The other big stem is in behind. I don't know why, it just sort of felt like I liked the look of it. I did rework this twice. Now we had yellow here, so there was a yellow flower there, one here and one down here, and I filled them full of French knots and it looked terrible. I tried to find a burnt yellow, but my yellow was too bright, and every time I glanced at this whole picture, all I could see was that yellow. So I ended up cutting that all out, removing those little bits of fabric. I left all the green in behind. You can still make out a tiny little bit of yellow sitting in behind there, but it's not too bad. Then I went back to this particular fabric, cut out a little circle and put a white French knot in, carried the white French knots through, added some of the leftover satin silk ribbon that was from doing this guy, and just sort of kept it quite neutral. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Probably the green leaves are a little bit too dark and they're just not popping on that background, but it's okay. I still like it and it fits better. It just looked ridiculous with the yellows. So that's definitely something that got reworked. You know when something's not right because every time you go back to the piece, that's what your eye is drawn to. I stitched down those with overcast stitch. This white fabric that was between this, that, and then there was the white fabric. I had a big piece here. It was another thing. It was just jumping out at me at not being the right, I don't know, it was just too much. It was not disappearing because at the end of the day, it's part of my background. So I cut that bigger piece into 3 and put one there, and then one up here. So this is all stitched down. They're all stitched down. There'll be further embellishments, I'm sure, maybe some work on this. I sort of do like it in its raw form as well. Maybe I just do the flowers. I don't know. I sort of, the more I look at it, I sort of like, yeah, I don't know where that'll lead me. Who knows? Can't be making all the decisions in one day. My piece of the path, that came to pretty much no change. And I'm thinking I will embroider that maybe with chocolate, a chocolate coloured thread, or even a mix of chocolate and red. Over here, I've still got this flower sitting here. It was on one of the other pieces, but when it fell off, it fell onto here and it just matched. So that's where it's going to stay. And I have a sort of a spot here where there's not a lot happening in the front of that little house. And I sort of felt that that was a good start to maybe a cluster of flowers down the track, or maybe there's a prompt that might sneak up into this zone. And that would be the start of the background for the next prompt. I don't know. Who knows? That's the great thing about these projects is we really don't know what's coming next. So it makes us really think when it comes to building this all together and making it sort of all come as one. I haven't done anything with the little house yet. I'm just going to let that sit for a bit. At the end of the day, it probably doesn't even need anything, but I probably will do some window panes, a doorknob, maybe something. I don't know. Who knows? That's a decision for another day. All right, I'll show you the other ones now and where they came out. You know, when I was just about to film this, one of the other ones' end had flipped onto the piece. Let me come up a little bit. So the end was sitting here from the one of the bobbin ones, and that lace just looked amazing. Now, I have planned to put in a sign here saying, you know, down the garden path. I'm not 100% sure about that. I thought about it all week and how it would be added, what layers, what font would I use to write it. So I'm still sort of tossing that around. I had it in a bigger area. These flowers kept growing and have encroached in that area, so I don't have a lot of space there. So anything that went in now has to be probably a little bit more lineal. Then this fell on. And I thought, how pretty would that be coming along the top somewhere, sort of building the top edge of the piece. So I need to go and find this lace because I think a piece of it's going to go in the top here. And maybe that'll help me sort of position my words and what I want to say here, you know, down the garden path. So yeah, that was just a funny little accident that just happened now, and I can see the lace. Hang on a minute. Let me grab that lace. There it is. So I only have a little bit of it left, and I'm thinking that it could become part of something along the top. Okay, I could start it on the red edge here, so that gives it a reason to be. So I like that. The only thing is it is a bit short and finishes here. Does that matter? Probably not. Where could I cut it that would look logical? Maybe there. And if I cut it at an angle, it wouldn't look like I've... or can I creep through there? If I cut that bit off, sorry guys, I've gone on a complete, yeah, I like that. I'm going to leave that pretty much the way it is. And I'm going to trim off that to start with. It looks like it's sort of kicking back out of the way for the flower piece, but I think I need to take that edge off. Yeah, I do. Let's get rid of that little morsel. Oh, there's a piece of lace gone from the stash. And that, oh, I like that. The other thing I want to have a think about too is the edge of the piece. There's a technique Rachel often uses, which I think is really cool, where you cut pieces of fabric into, say, 1.5 inches. You fold it in half and just pop it over the edge, and then just do some running stitch through. I'm thinking that might be my edge because it's got a real rusticy, natural sort of flowy, well, that's a stupid way to describe it. How do I describe it? Where have I got it used on something? I'm just looking around my room. I did an envelope with it. Anyway, another day. That's what I'm thinking of doing. It's just 2-inch pieces folded in half. They're about 1.5 inches wide. You just fold it over, a binding, but it's real rustic. It's not like a proper bias binding. So before I get crazy with this lace, I probably need to decide what I'm doing with my perimeter, and then that would slide in under this lace. So I'm just going to pin that lace because I really, really like that. And it has decreased the space that my words need to go into. Maybe I won't find it as daunting fitting something in here in a lineal line instead of a big block. I think that's probably more suitable. All right, that's enough mucking around with that one. Otherwise, I won't get to show you the other ones. So I'm just going to put my little piece of wool there. I've got a needle in the way. So this guy, next, this is the Colour Wave. So that's him finished. Now, if you recall, I was planning on focusing on more bullion stitches. Let me zoom in so that you can see. And to kick off the piece, I had that little piece of embroidery there from the table runner. So I've since added some gold thread, little leaves there to sort of bring in all of this gold thread that pops up everywhere else, those pistol stitches, for example. So 2 little flowers there. I then added to the top of this little curved area one of these little stitches. Now, let me tell you, that was actually an error. As you know, the thread, filament thread, is probably about 6 threads, and I was attempting to work all 6 of them. So my plan was to do one of those stitches, which is just a lazy daisy up in here. And what happened is 3 or 2 of them, I think it's 3 threads. I did break it down from the 6, which I used in the pistol stitches, down to 3. 2 of them got away on me, and they were out in the air like that, hanging out there, but the one was in the center actually forming the lazy daisy. And I thought it looked really cute, and it's given it a bit of a dimension. So that is a lazy daisy stitch that was incorrect, but I really like how that actually happened. I tried to do it again, but it didn't happen. I got a lazy daisy. So it was just one of those stitches that went wrong, but I really liked the way that it went wrong. And because that metallic thread is so floaty and wriggles around so much, it's not the easiest to work with. I found some little beads that I just put randomly around. I put a cluster in the center of that flower. That flower was on the embroidery piece from the doily or the table runner. Put some beads around that top edge, just following the edge of that little embellishment. That's those little sequin flowers there, and I just popped a French knot in the center to hold it, and the French knot cotton is the same as what I used in these bullion stitches up the top here. Now, when you get to there, that's my work. So I've sort of followed the theme of this scrolly little piece, tiniest little piece, and then built on from there. So we've got the bullion stitch in a few spots, that's in the wool. Then I dropped down to a different size thread and did that little guy. And then remember here on video, I did a beaded gold bead scroll. I didn't like it. It was too big for the piece. It needed to be daintier. It was like every time I looked at it once again, it was the only thing I saw. So I pulled it apart and I just scattered those beads throughout the piece just randomly. Some look like they're part of the plant, some are detached from the plant, and then a few that sort of rolled off onto the floor. I picked them back up and just stitched them in a few little random spots. So that's what happened to the scroll of beads that was there. Now, if I remember rightly, there was a flower in here that inspired us to do that. Gosh, it was like over a week ago, so my memory is failing me, but I'm positive I saw something in here and I was like, let's have a go at that one. Yeah, that there was what kicked me off. And then there was these two flowers here that had used bullions where they'd got really lots and lots of winding and made them quite twisty. But mine didn't quite work out like that. I probably needed to twist, 6 times more than I did. But that was my take on it. And that was the inspiration, came from that book. So that's the wildflower prompt on the colour wave. I did add this leaf. It came as part of the packs that I got from the little Etsy store that gives you morsels of lace. You would have seen the review of those different places that you can get resources from little Etsy stores through to going to the big factories overseas and buying a little bit more in quantity. But it depends what type of shopper you are. You might only want little packs of bits and pieces to kick you off, or you want, a little bit more of everything because you do a lot of work in the embroidery. So the only other thing I added is I added this white little embellishment to that pink doily. The pink doily nearly got taken away. It was too pink. It just didn't look right, especially once that tulle went over this little piece of linen. It just didn't sort of match. But as soon as I dropped the white embellishment on top, it disappeared. So I'm really happy with that. So that's stitched down. I stitched this little guy down. I don't know if he'll be in the right spot for a prompt, but he's down. I can always disconnect him and reposition him if I have to. I was sick of the needle jabbing me. I haven't gone any further than that because I'm still hunting for bits of purples and blues, and I haven't yet had a chance to sort of sit down and play with what I've found in my stash. I've got some linens from this family that I think will get me through to the end. So that's the colour wave and how it's going so far. And I really just did some more invisible stitch just to make sure everything was down and in position. So that's the colour wave update. Now the splash of colour, which is focusing on doilies. What did I end up finishing here? Nothing really changed from what we had in the video, but I did finish the wording. So I've got the name of the project here. This little piece has been stitched down with just some little overcast stitch around the end. That's the original embroidery that was on the doily. And then I've worked in all of this to create the meandering wildflowers. And then in addition, I added 3 little elements from 3, that's from the same doily. And that was from a completely different one. And remember, the little daisy was only stitched like that, so I've tucked it in under that yellow so it sort of looks like it was a whole daisy. I've gone around this little guy with some running stitch just to give him a little bit more embellishment. I've added these 3 little flowers. Once again, they were just off a pillar slip, so they're stitched in, and I'm slowly working my way through the background here with lots of seed stitch, and that will continue through that whole thing. I'm even thinking of running it up the side here, and that will really make this piece mold together, and it won't look like, see this here where you can see two have joined. So to merge that by the eye, I'm going to fill it full of seed stitch. So in there, you wouldn't know, but there's actually a couple different joins underneath all that, but the eye won't pick it up. So that's sort of how I like to melt my pieces together, especially when you're doing this style of slow stitch, bringing in antique pieces to blend with other pieces. And, you know, at the end of the day, they're completely different when you have a look at them, different styles of embroidery, but to bring it all together so it looks like one piece, that's the challenge with this style. We had discussed that the rolling pin would be at the top and then it would come down. That's still the plan, but I'm still looking at this piece and thinking that the bottom, let me come up and you'll see what I mean, that the bottom, this is where, you know, I'd continue on with the next prompts. The bottom feels like the bottom here by the way that these two laces have laid on top of each other. So I have to, I don't know, I'm thinking I might cut it here and this fabric will join in up here, which would be not a bad thing because then this gives me a nice open space for another prompt because there's not a lot of room here for prompts. The other thing I'm thinking is maybe I need to go this way and get that bigger rolling pin out, and that might help me with some future prompts. Yeah, I don't know what the prompts are, but let's, for argument's sake, a birdhouse pops up. That would give me an opportunity to run a birdhouse through here. So I sort of just going to keep my ideas open that maybe the spool idea or the rolling pin idea may be a little bit too tight for me because I'm using all these vintage pieces of embroidery plus newer pieces, and I'm trying to mesh it all together into one piece. So I think this one could really go in a few different directions. So that's the latest on that piece. And then the last one is the Champagne Garden. So I haven't done much down through the bottom here, just invisible stitched it all, but I do need to go through and start edging it all, which is sort of what I was doing late last night because it's starting to fray. These are all very coarse fabrics, so they're going to just disintegrate on me if I don't get them stitched. So I do want to get through and just get them all pinned down. Some of those other ones are really fine, like this one. And they're just not falling apart as much. They're tulles and laces, so I've got time on those. I have been stitching down the linen because your linen is definitely one that will fray. But this piece is full of nearly everything that's going to fray, so I do need to address that. So coming back up to the top, you can see where I've been stitching down everything. So just an overcast stitch. I'm yet to come through that edge, but I was coming along there. I then did some camphor quilt type stitching or boro stitching on that linen. That linen's really soft and sort of wriggles a little bit sideways. So I just felt I really needed to pin it down. I've got that guy there, but I'm yet to edge him there. As we get closer to my piece, this is where I'm sort of left off. So I've just done a real primitive overcast stitch. This here, if you remember, they didn't cross over each other. One wasn't laying on top of the other. So if you sort of bent my project, you would see the underneath. So what I did is I stitched one side and stitched the other, and it just gave a bit more of a decorative element there. But that's actually pretty good considering that I didn't have enough fabric to actually have one sit on top of the other. So that's a bit of a save. That's all stitched around the little piece of music. Then we get to our path. If you remember, the path was a lot longer. I did cut it because I want a piece of that to maybe pop up somewhere else, just so I keep the story of the path happening. This is all done. I haven't yet stitched these guys and the wisteria. I can't decide about those. I'm not sure what's stopping me, but I haven't stitched it yet. They were going to be some crocus. in here. And I'm just wondering if there's a prompt coming that I'll need some height. See, this is where the birdhouse keeps popping into my head. I don't even know if we're going to get a birdhouse. That's irrelevant, but it's one of those structures that will need a bit of height. So that potentially could be just enough room to squeeze a birdhouse in. So at this stage, I'm just going to leave that. I'm actually going to iron that back off because I think I can pop the crocus anywhere. Do I want to ruin a huge space for something that may be needed? It might even be a prompt that is a vine. Well, that would be a perfect spot to wind a vine up. So I just not sure. And in that thinking, I ended up tightening up my display of wildflowers. This top was right over to here. So I ended up pulling the fabric around and making sure that those clusters came back into this. So that made this whole wildflower display quite tight. And then these little daisies, instead of popping them around the place like I had, spreading myself out, I pulled it in tighter. So I made more of a cluster here of flowers, popped buttons in. I still have one spare button. I couldn't really, oh no, he popped down here. I was just looking up here and thinking there was a button up here planned, but he's back down on the path. So I sort of snuck back down on the path here a little bit with that button. These little flowers poked in here. Now, as you come up, nothing really happened here. I might pop some beads around the center there because this is where I'm up to. This is where I sort of want to work some more. So I pretty much finished everything I wanted to finish, but I just have a little bit more work up the top here to do. One being embellish this flower somehow. The little leaf that we tucked up here, I just popped those two little flowers there. That to me looks a little bit unfinished. So whether I put some beads around that corner or I'm just not sure. And of course, I've still got to work my wisteria, and you can see my little red marks there of where that is going to go. So that's the update. Oh, and I added that piece of lace. Now that crocheted edge came from the doily that all of these little pieces were on. Remember the doily where the embroidery was in the circle? And I cut out two pieces to add to this piece. Well, that crocheted edge I thought worked beautifully in this champagne one. So it's amazing how often bits will cross over from other projects. They sort of, yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know. I find that quite amazing. So this is my little box of tricks. Look at this. I've run out of sewing machine cotton. This is the third one I've emptied in about 3.5 months, and that's 500 meters, which in yards is 547 yards. So 3 of them, that's 1.5 kilometers of stitching I have done. Isn't that crazy when you think of it like that? That's the bit left from there. So that will be handy for future embroidery. That needs to go into the box connected to this project. And this, when I was about to film, this fell off. Now this, I had planned on bringing down this side of the path. So that really looks like you're walking in here and then down the path. So that needs to be pinned before it's lost in the abyss. And I'll get some more cotton. I was so desperate for cotton last night. Like I have to go and actually get some because everything I've got is either chocolate brown or white. I don't have the cream. But I went to my poor sewing machine and I stole the bobbins to get cotton to finish some more embroidery. How bad is it when you're stealing? Look, there's hardly anything on there. I've got to go and get some cotton because I'm coming to a grinding halt without it. So what I might do, see we've got a bit of time, I'm going to stitch this down with some little stitches, and then I want to have a look at that wisteria and get that started. and I've grabbed out some beads. I'm not sure which ones I'll use. I grabbed some metallic-y shiny ones, and I grabbed some pearls. Where are they? Have a look at those. That's a mixed bunch, and that's the other pearl. 2 different size pearls and those metallic ones. So I'll just get this little guy stitched down because he's already fallen off once. I don't want to lose him because I like how he softens that path a little bit. It's tricky on the bottom side of the path because if you do stitch something there, you probably can only stitch about 1/2 inch in height. If you went any higher, you'd distort your path a little bit. So whatever's on the bottom side of it sort of needs to be small, like French knots and things like that, which gives me another idea. Maybe I come back through there and just pop a few beads in as well. This is the one that I want to do more work on. The others I'm pretty happy with where they're at until the next prompt's revealed. And I'm wondering if the next prompt will probably put my mind at rest, knowing sort of the style the girls are going to take us in and how much space I'll need for things. But then again, they could throw us a curveball too, which is always very welcome because it makes you think a little bit differently about your project. So we will know more by the end of today. It'll be another sleepless night. I get so weary and I go to bed, and then when I know it's a prompt reveal night, I tend to wake up about past 10, 11 and start grabbing the phone, and then I see the video. The one time, I think it was in the Christmas, I thought I won't watch the video because it's silly. I need to get sleep. But I picked up the phone and just saw the words. That was enough. I didn't even need to watch the video. It was snowmen, I think it was, and that was the end of me. I laid there and I laid there. I finally dozed off, and then I think I woke about 3 a.m. Snowman pops into the head, and it was on again. I was like, goodness. So, yeah, Wednesdays are tough. They're ruining my sleep patterns. Isn't that silly? What are we to do? What else would I be doing? Sleeping? We don't need sleep. We need stitching. All right, that is secure, so I don't need to worry about that little guy. He's ever so subtle, but he's in. I think I will do something here. Got a little triangle, so I could fill that full of all sorts of morsels. Definitely. All right, back up to the top here. Now, the wisteria, I don't think it was in this book. I think it was one of the wildflower books. But I think she does do a wisteria, yeah. So I just wanted to have a quick look at it and note the shape of the wisteria. I don't want to get too triangular because then it just doesn't look like the actual wisteria. She's made them quite, I don't know, random with little knots in amongst it. There's a little bit of air between them all. I think that's probably a key. I love all this fine work in around it, so I could probably do a little bit of that, but we'll see how we go. Now, I don't have much cotton, so we won't get far. Oh, look at that. I have the tiniest piece. Isn't this ridiculous? Where's my beading needle? There it is. This tiny itty bitty thing. It's so sharp. But boy, it's good to work with, as in it just slices through. So let's have a play. Do we use these? I guess if I don't like them, I think they're going to be too big. I'm sort of liking, there's a tiny little pearl sitting in there by mistake, and I like how that actually looks in amongst them. Let's hook him out. See that little guy? I'm thinking that might actually work really well. So where are we going to put one? I think we'll still go here. I might leave a little space so it's not 100% connected, so a little bit of air, if you will. Let me zoom in again. So let's get this thread fastened off. Probably need a bigger knot, but we'll do a little bit of stitching here before we get going. Okay, so let's pick up, do we want a silvery one? Yeah, let's get him into position. Get him stitched down. Then we might come across and grab one of these, maybe a gold, so he matches that. We'll let him sit at a different angle because we don't want it to look too uniformed, and he's sitting a little bit higher, so that's okay. And look, if I don't like it, I'm just going to snip it out and try something else. So I've done wisteria before with French knots. I've never included beads. Now the third colour in here is this see-through one. I'll give him a go. Only because this combination looked really cool. That inspired me. But we do need some pearls in it, so let's do a pearl bead next. But I'm going to go down to this little guy. The one that was loose in that pack appears to be those. So I feel comfortable stitching him in. Yeah, I like it. Whether it'll look like wisteria at the end of it's another thing, but anyway. Let's come down into the next row and we might put another little guy. I think that will break it up a bit, because if I do another big bead of any of the first three, I think it'll look like it's a bit too similar. So I'm going to pop that little guy in there. Get my 2 stitches. So he's in amongst it. Can barely see him, but he looks good here in real life. Whether he's going to be overpowered by the big ones, possibly. What colour will we do next? We might do a silvery one next. Yeah, so far so good. Maybe another pearl. Maybe I should bring in a big pearl. Just so that it competes a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I like that. I think we might bring in, oh, I lost the thread. I might bring in one of those see-through guys next. Yep, I like that. And maybe over this side, I'm going to run out of thread. I'll be able to get some white cotton, will be fine. I'm going to pop over here some of these little ones. I can't believe I went to my sewing machine and stole the cotton off my bobbins. Can't believe I've got no cream thread anywhere. Just goes to show how much stitching I've been doing. Now, just looking at the shape, it sort of feels like it's wanting to kick this way, so I might go with that. I'm going to put in there maybe another silver. And we'll make the wisteria come at a bit of an angle. Right, I'm going to have to end that off. Oh, I've run out of cotton now. I know this happens to all of you. This is how organised I am for YouTube filming. It's just as it happens is as it happens. So where's my cotton? All right, hold that thought. I'm going to just jump up and grab my cottons. All right. So I've got some white cotton, which will be fine. Oops, don't knock the beads over. Disaster's waiting to happen. Okay. There is threads out there on the market that are designed for beading. They're quite strong, and you probably would get away with one stitch per bead. I've never bothered buying it because I do 2 stitches per bead, and I feel like they feel secure, and it's not like it's going onto clothing where like an arm would be brushing against a bodice, and you probably would want a stronger filament. This cotton here that I'm using doesn't feel real good quality. I think that's like when you buy, you know, 3 cottons, 3 colours together, some of the cheaper brands. That's probably just a birch or something like that. Where that other cotton I normally use, that's a good brand, this German brand. It's 100% polyester. It's, I use that for everything. Can't believe I've done 1.5 kilometres of stitching. Oh, if only I'd walked 1.5 kilometres per day between the stitching. Wouldn't that be good for me? That hasn't happened. So now I'm going to put a little guy in, I think. Maybe 2 little guys. Would that be crazy? Because they're so little. Yep, that's good. I like that. Well, I haven't done any French knots, have I? Do I need them? Might try them because I think they would add a little bit of something. I might just add another couple of these little beads. I feel like I'm at the end of the little bunch. I might just add another one. I'll bring the camera up to it so you can see. These are really... I'm going to end that off because I think we're there, or I'm wondering, do I bring in a little gold bead? Where's the hole? I've got my gold bead sitting here in my tray that I was using on the Wave of Colour project, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I do. I might just put one of them in, or 2, because I just feel like the end of zoom in phone, I just feel like the end of the piece has those 4 little pearl beads and it's just lost a little bit. So I'm going to sneak in, if I can second one up. A little bit of gold. I think that'll convince my brain that that wisteria is down there. Yeah, there you go. That's helped. Now the other thing I wanted to do is, how are we going for time? Is get some little tendrils. I can't even say the word. I did this technique on a bag many years ago, which was a little cottage on the front of a bag, and the cottage bent out and it was a pocket. And on the front of that cottage was all this wisteria, which was stitched separately into little clusters like this, then cut out and then stitched onto the front of the little house. You didn't actually stitch it directly onto the piece. And in the process, I just remembered that we made these little curly tendrils. And I'm wondering if I can do that. How are we going for time? We got 15 minutes. So what we did, I probably need to go looking for a thread that is not divisible, like a DMC divides into 6 little threads, a crochet cotton into one. And what we did, maybe I could use green. Do we know? It's champagne done. We sort of want a champagne-y sort of colour. Maybe this will work. Or do I go and hunt out a chocolate? I think I need to hunt out a chocolate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video for a second, clear this away because I'm going to get the glue and try and stiffen some threads and curl them so that they can be in on this, if that makes sense. I'm going to stop the video. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back with a impromptu tutorial on making tendrils. That was not where I thought this video was going, but anyway, I'm thinking it's going to work. I'm sure this is how I did it back in the day, is I got my book awl or a pokey tool or a knitting needle. I think I actually used a knitting needle when I did it because these were not really on my radar as tools at the time because I had not got into journal making at that stage. So what I'm doing is I've covered the end of the tool with just a little bit of cling. That allows to protect the tool so that I'm not making a mess of my pokey tool or my book awl. I then get some PVA glue. You don't need a lot, just a little itty bitty bit. And I've got some crochet cotton, number 8 crochet cotton, I think will be fine enough. And it's just a case of put some of the glue on the cotton and then I'm just going to wind it onto the tool like so. And I want to get right down to the end where it tapers because that then allows you to get a really nice little finish at the end of your little tendril. I keep wanting to say tentacle, but that's on an animal. We want a tendril. So I'm just now putting a little extra glue on there and just sort of smearing it around so it absorbs into the fibres of the tool, the cotton. And then I might actually leave that attached. Doesn't need to be snipped. And I'm just going to set that aside to dry. Now, 20 minutes ago is when I started doing this. So I've come back and it is semi-dry and I've peeled one off already. That's where it was heading down the book awl, this tool. And then that sort of come off the top of it and it hadn't really dried. So I just fiddled around with it and got a few more kinks into it so it wasn't completely, straight. So they probably need a fraction longer to dry, but I'm just going to gently undo this one now and just see how the shape comes about. The main thing is they look kinked. You sort of want to do it not when they're completely dry, otherwise it really is quite difficult to get them off. So you just take your time, massage it, and they'll slowly come off, and then you've got yourself a little tendril. Now if there's any glue visible, it's easy enough just to, well, I say that, it's easy enough to get your fingers in there and just pull off any excess glue. That's why it's important not to use too much when you get them onto your little piece. And there you have another little tendril. And because it's got that glue in the thread, it's going to actually make it hold its shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way because I want to bring my needlework back. Finish with that. I only need a couple. And bring this back in. So the plan now is with my needle and thread, which is still threaded here, is let's see if we can stitch these little guys into position. Yeah, I like that. That looks very organic. So now, oh, now my thread has popped out of the needle. It's like the bane of my life, but that's needlework for you. Now I'm just going to pop a couple stitches and just couch this little guy into position. Maybe these are grapes and not wisteria. I don't even know if wisteria has tendrils like this. Doesn't matter, does it? Got myself a bit twisted. That's better. So I might just put 2 little stitches in there like that and bring that tendril maybe down more over the beads. Yeah, I like that. And I might, so that it's protected and doesn't get caught on anything, I'm just going to just place a few little random itty bitty stitches just to hold them into position, because otherwise they might get caught. Well, I know they'll get caught when you start sewing. What's that thread from? Something fraying. When you start stitching, you got needles flying everywhere and threads. Anything that does stick up like that can get caught. So I'll just scoot back over to this side. Happy where that is. Yeah, what the hang, it's going there. Maybe bend it slightly down, because I might want to do another one up in here. So I might just bend that a little bit downwards with my finger and then catch it. Whoops. Take your time, Corrine. Now that is 99% dry. I can still feel it's slightly tacky, but that won't take long to dry. Those little tendrils will be in position. So there you go. Didn't think I was going to be doing that, but I'm happy with the result. I was just going to couch some little threads in or stitch something, but that's a bit fun. Now the second one I did, we might attach up into here, and I'll do the same thing with the beads. I'll start stitching down a little cluster, and then the one that's still drying, that's on the stick still, let's pretend that's the third one, might bring that up into there and do a little one coming down in here somewhere. I think I've got enough room. I could even do some baby tendrils down here with just a few little beads. I could probably cut one of them in half and just use a tiny little bit. So I've got plenty of options there. I think by the time that other one comes off the end of the book awl, I've got quite a length on there. Just need to let it dry. Don't be impatient, Corrine. Leave it be. And that will work out just nice. I think that's all I need. So it's just then a case of get rid of the cling wrap off your tool. It's not damaged or hasn't got dirty in any way. So that's the plan. I'll work on that today while we wait for the next prompt, and that will sort of finish off that top edge a little bit. So yeah, okay, thanks for joining me, guys, and I will see you all again on the Saturday when I pick up one of these pieces with the new prompt burning a hole in my brain, and we work out what we're going to do, and that'll set us off for the weekend of stitching. All right, guys, look after yourselves, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.